Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 7 of The Real Deal, your source for spoiler free movie reviews. I'm Nathaniel Ahart.
I'm Alex Kent.
And I'm Jacob Towell.
So, it's been a while since we last
It's
been on
definitely been a
air.
while.
So,
Things have
first off,
happened.
many things have happened in the world, and we're not going to, catch you up to speed.
We all know.
I think you already know.
Right.
But yeah, it's good to be back first and foremost, and we're just excited to bring you all a great season.
Although it's a new format, still movies. We're getting some good stuff that we'll get into, obviously, but just fun to be with you guys again and look forward to another good season.
Absolutely.
I'm just happy there's movies to talk about again.
That's a fair answer.
Yeah.
Because who would have thought,
Who would have thought?
we wouldn't have movies, but luckily we're getting to a point, the local theater just opened, so that's great, on the weekends if you want to go catch something. So, things are really looking up, and then of course everything else going on in the world seems like we're on an uptick.
A way of escapism in this rough time.
Yes.
Yeah, but luckily things are getting better. So also in other news, because the current events of the world have delayed this to this point in time, the 2021, the 93rd Academy Award nominations have been announced about a week ago now. And I have a lot of thoughts on it because of course there were some massive snubs, which I will get into.
Yeah.
But this is probably the least offensive year when it comes to nominations.
That's fine.
I feel like everything was fairly represented.
Yeah, and another good thing this year, we got a lot of black representation too. A lot of the nominations,
Yeah, a
even
lot of minorities.
Soul is an animated movie, and that was one of the best
Yeah.
representation of the black community as a whole for me that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and also because if you look at how many acting nominees, 9 nominees of color were nominated.
Yes.
Whether that be black, Asian, or whatnot. I think it's such a huge step forward because I don't think it feels like a forced narrative at all. It feels like most all those performances were legitimately great and deserved to be there.
Yeah.
And also for Best Director, we have 2 female nominees.
Mhm.
There's only been 5 nominees beforehand, female nominees for Best Director that we've ever had before. And I think honestly, it's Chloe Zhao's award to lose. Considering the traction
with
that she's had.
Nomadland, with what happened with the Golden Globes, and yes, they're not the true indicator most of the time, but it's just this movie's getting a lot of momentum behind it, so it wouldn't shock me. I think she's a guarantee to win for director, but the movie, we'll get into pictures soon. So
of course, and yeah, speaking of Best Picture, there were definitely some big snubs which I'll get into, but I'll say across the board. And maybe this is just because of the year, so this could very well be a factor. But I think the Academy is finally moving away from the Oscar baiting type of movies that they like to honor. The only 2 that really come to mind are Mank, because it's a movie about Hollywood, I love it, and Trial of Chicago 7, large ensemble cast, one of the most acclaimed writers in history, and so all the rousing drama. So besides that though.
Well, for me, I want to mention this, and I know, Jacob, this is another movie that you really enjoyed. For The Sound of Metal, that was a movie I saw a few months ago on Amazon, and I heard good things, but when I saw its nominations with Riz Ahmed and for Best Picture,
and Paul Raci.
That too.
That was great.
Riz Ahmed, I sort of knew was a lock. He was. I'm not sure if he's going to win, or we'll get into that as well. But for the movie, it's so low key. There's really no agenda to it. A lot of Oscar movies have it. This is more just representation for the deaf community and how to handle a situation that tough and deal with adversity. That movie, I'm not sure how it's going to fare, but the fact it got nominated, it's a great sign going forward for the Oscars that they're going for the low-key character stuff.
Yeah, the independent films. You look at how many movies are independent films. But I will say, well, first off, I think the exclusion of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and One Night in Miami, which I love the latter of the 2, I think that really signified what I was saying. But the fact that there is only 1 nomination for Spike Lee's The Five Bloods is absolutely ridiculous, especially Delroy Lindo. Come on, who? I don't think you 2 have seen the movie yet, but I feel like everyone who sees that movie
I have not seen it yet.
doesn't walk away watching it and being like, oh yeah, he was he wasn't incredible.
Yeah, I've heard great things, and with the movie that I have to see The Five Bloods. That's been on my list for a long time. But One Night in Miami, I mean, I know that Leslie Odom got nominated as great time as Sam Cooke. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Sam Cooke's one of my favorite singers, and Leslie Odom personified that with his beautiful voice as well.
Absolutely.
But the issues that are discussed in this film, I'm shocked that it wasn't nominated. I understand, like, the other movies that are nominated. There was 8 this year. They were all great, but One Night in Miami is so relevant with everything going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. And Regina King's direction, I mean, for her debut, she was already a great actress, and then behind the camera, just as good. We see that a lot nowadays, but great debut, and unfortunately, I mean, no nomination, but still, we're allowed to enjoy it. So,
but I think one of the biggest things, and I'm glad this happened, was all the nominations for Judas and the Black Messiah, especially Lakeith Stanfield for supporting actor. I mean, everyone knew Kaluuya is getting nominated, probably going to win, but like, they campaigned him for lead, and like somehow he ended up in supporting. So I think that it's a great thing. He's awesome in that movie, and I'm just glad it got all the love it did, because I was worried they were going to shut it out of Best Picture, and they didn't.
Well, another movie too, and it's a comedy film, but the first one got some love from the Golden Globes. And this is where Jacob's going to come in. Borat 2 got some nominations as well, so seeing a movie based on this is goofy, but I mean, it's great. There's a lot of
Borat 2 is one of 2 Oscar nominations I have seen this year, aside from Sound of Metal. And Borat 2, I thought was hilarious and timely because of especially who was being, I guess, pranked and joked upon in that movie. But the Rudy Giuliani scene was just one of the craziest things I've seen this year alone. And you know, with a lot of these movies, it's interesting to think about how they were nominated, like what Alex said about Sound of Metal. Because I feel like if a lot of the movies that were supposed to come out last year came out and people were probably end up talking about those more, I feel like movies like those, like Sound of Metal, and a lot of the movies nominated this year would probably not be nominated or even talked about even as much.
I mean, that's what I'm wondering. But
that's what it was the perfect year for these underrated movies to come out because there was literally nothing else to really even nominate. The good ones were going to stand out no matter what. The good
I was going to say, Jacob, with Promising Young Woman as well, it's another indie film that, I mean, I'm not sure any other year where we see a lot of indie movies where someone like Carey Mulligan takes a stand. And this is what I've heard. I see this movie as well, but it's the performance of her career so far.
Absolutely.
So a movie like that, who knows in another year where we get more releases if that would still get nominated, but we'll see. A lot of these movies, I respect the fact that the Oscars are going more for inclusion and diversity with indie movies as well. Not even just political agendas, just with indie movies, because indie movies, some of them are the best.
They usually end up being the best in the year.
They always end up being the best of the year. Usually.
We'll have to wrap it up for this block, but don't go anywhere because we're going to be right back with our first review in well over a year for Raya and the Last Dragon.
Stay tuned.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Don't let E. coli mosh with your food. An estimated 3,000 Americans die from a foodborne illness each year. So always separate raw meat from vegetables. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
If you think trains will stop if they see a car on the tracks, you're right. They will. About a mile after they hit you. Stop. Trains can't.
Welcome back to The Real Deal, here with our review of Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, let's see where we left off. Oh yeah, so we're going to talk about the voice cast real quick, because this movie has, we could say, quite an eclectic cast of characters, and primarily Asian actors, which of course, goes to the credibility of inclusion, and that's always great. And this is Kelly Marie Tran's first big role after Star Wars, which we all know was such a hit with everybody. Everybody loved her.
I really loved her role in Star Wars. Yeah, one of my
Rose
favorites.
Tuco is the savior of the universe. That's what it is.
No, but I think, she does a fair enough job here. I don't think it's anything that stands out to a particular extent.
Yeah.
But, it's serviceable for what they're doing.
She did what she could. She did what she could with the script, that's for sure. Yeah.
I want to say, I think that Kelly Marie Tran, when she was Rose Tico the last few years in the Star Wars universe, she was good with what she was given. But in this movie, I actually saw, even though it's voice acting, that's still difficult. A lot of people say, oh, you're just reading lines. It's so easy. And I think that's ignorant. But she brought me into this world, and she brought me into Raya's world of someone that's struggling to find her way after a tragedy. I'm not going to go into what it was.
She did have a much better emotional range in this movie. She showed her emotional range better than live action Star Wars somehow.
Sure, no, and that's the thing. Like, I think this is a step forward for her, but I think another thing too. Well, of course, Benedict Wong was in it, which I didn't realize. There's a lot of who's who in this movie. Daniel Day Kim was in it, and let's see, Gemma Chan. But Awkwafina, of course, is the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Because she does her Awkwafina thing.
Yeah, if you like her, this is my comparison. To me, she reminds me a lot of Kevin Hart and things like that. The act is the same no matter what. And with something like this, she goes full on Awkwafina. And if you aren't a fan of her to begin with her comedy act, then you aren't going to like her role. But if you already like her, then you're going to love this, because it's just her being her most Awkwafina-ish.
And of course, she does have range, as we saw with.
Right.
I mentioned that. She's great in that. Yeah.
But this is the typical role you'd see from Awkwafina. But I think overall the voice cast is very solid. Disney always gets top tier talent in all their projects. Well, for the most part, and so you come to expect it at this point. But really, I think tying into what we were saying earlier with how well they did based on what they were given. I love Disney movies. I eat them up. Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Tangled, all that
amazing stuff.
Yeah. And I even loved Moana. Not, of course, I don't think it's like that high when it comes to their canon, but there's a formula that Disney follows and it works for them. I think this movie is way too formulaic.
Yeah.
To the extent that it's underdeveloped and it's repetitive. Because we can all agree the themes that they were going for in this movie, they just kind of beat you over the head with it. There was no subtlety, and it just felt like, okay, we get it. You've already proved your point.
Yes.
Well, another thing, too, with the themes of the movie, I thought the plot was repetitive, too. So to really simplify this, it's a journey with a very diverse, wide-ranging cast of characters. And to me, every single time they went somewhere new, it was the same thing. Recover something, meet someone, befriend them, move on. And to me, I understand that's a formula that what journeys are, you got to make friends and then acquaintances to get your end goal done. But at this moment, some of it was just too ridiculous for me to even get into. There's one really ridiculous friend of hers that I won't even. She's being marketed a lot, but
this movie is literally the friends that we made along the way. The movie.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
It really is. Everything is exactly the same from the second she leaves her home, or I guess the epilogue or intro. Well, I guess the main event happens in the beginning. And and in a world of mystical dragons and world-ending stones and magic and witchcraft, all that, Awkwafina does not make any sense in this area and tone whatsoever. Like, listen, you love or hate Awkwafina. You could love Awkwafina, and like it still is terrible in this movie. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why is Awkwafina here as the main savior dragon of this mystical world? And she's talking about, I don't know, she's just being so goofy all the time. Like, she's not talking about anything of substance at all. And, you know,
I will say that,
like, it's just interesting. Yeah.
They do explain it, but, you know, I mean, it could have been better. You know, they do, but it's like... Oh, what's up?
They do. I mean, they kind of lightly explain it, well, not really. I mean... She's still a 1,000-year-old dragon or something. She should be a little more mature. Like,
you know what this reminded me of? You guys know the video game Sly Cooper?
I've heard of it. I really played that.
It kind of reminds me of the way that game progresses. It felt like a video game narrative. And
another video game, I'm just going to make this real fast. A game titled The Last Guardian, where a young boy meets like this mythical creature and they get along. And the thing doesn't even talk. To me, even if they found a way to not have the dragons talk, to me, that would have been better than Awkwafina just like rambling. And I mean, another thing, she's so naive. She's been around for many hundreds and hundreds of years, and she trusts everyone. And that's another thing that we trust. And if you see it, you'll get that immediately.
We'll save that for when you see the movie. The last thing I will say, though, is I think the ending really hit. Because I was feeling something at the end, and I think that goes to the credit of some of the characters and relationships that they built in the movie.
Well,
sort of few and far between.
The ending, most Disney movies and Pixar as well. I mean, Pixar is very similar to Disney, same stuff. They always know how to find a way to hit. Even Onward earlier in the year from Pixar, the movie itself.
Last year, actually.
From last year. From
the last movie we reviewed.
The last movie, yeah. The last one we saw. The ending hit. The rest of it was all right.
But I guess in the next block, we will give you our final ratings and final thoughts on Raya and the Last Dragon, and we'll be right back.
All right.
The inherent right to work is one of the elemental privileges of a free people. Endowed, as our nation is, with abundant physical resources, and inspired as it should be to make those resources and opportunities available for the enjoyment of all, we approach re-employment with the real hope of finding a better answer than we have now.
Donate to Goodwill, where your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community.
Life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
Welcome to Understood.org, a free online resource for parents of kids with learning and attention issues, with personalized recommendations, tools, and daily access to experts to help your child thrive. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
Pretty much a good day for me would be people leaving their hands off of me. I'm always called names. Everywhere that I go, there's always someone calling me names, calling me gay. I've been choked, thrown up against a wall, punched. Nobody's ever tried to help me.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. You can't control where it will land, only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how to protect your community from wildfires.
Welcome back to our first episode of Season 7 of The Real Deal. Here tonight, we are reviewing Raya and the Last Dragon, the, I believe, 59th animated studio or film from Walt Disney Animation Studios.
At least someone's still counting.
Yeah, from what I can recollect, that could be wrong there, so don't take my word. But yeah, me and Alex at least saw it in theaters, and it's also on Disney Plus for a ridiculous amount of money. And, you know, I got to say, it felt like never left the theaters, which was
just to start off before we get into the movie, just going to theaters again was amazing. although the film wasn't one of my favorites so far of the year from 2020, 2021, it was still great to sit in the theater and just have the experience. So I was glad to be with you as well. And we were missing out on Jacob, but
yes, I did miss the theater. You know, the theater experience is still something I'm missing. But I think the last movie I saw in the theaters was Tenet, back when it came out, because we were lucky enough to have an IMAX theater that was totally empty near us. But other than that, I watched it on Disney Plus, and I don't know how I felt about it. Initially I felt like I felt like this movie was tonally off, I think, is what I have to say the most about its story and its characters. It gets really dark at times, but then the characters themselves and how they're written, it doesn't really make sense. They get childish, and they just kind of start talking like they're sitting like in a Starbucks, like waiting for their coffee at some points in this movie. The main character, who Rhea. Wow, I forgot the name of the main character. Rhea and Awkwafina the dragon. I really did not like their discourse in between a lot of these movies, in between a lot of like the traveling and just a lot of their scenes in general. It just didn't tonally fit with the story, which is so much bigger than, I guess, what they're talking about most of the time.
Yeah, well, no, it reminds me of another Disney movie, and this is going to be a weird comparison, but Dinosaur, because they use lingo in that movie, like, oh, say hello to the love monkey.
Yeah,
and it's like why are we using this modern dialect into what I assume is a kind of ancient,
very ancient, way ancient, yeah.
But like, there's like they're talking about like credits, and it's like, wait, that did that exist?
I want to add on to what's being said, what you just said, Nathaniel. The thing with the movie is, the way it starts is we learn of this world of Kumandra, where many different tribes are living in harmony at first, and then obviously conflict starts, and that's what the theme of the movie is. You got to trust one another. That's what the father shows Raya to do. Yeah. But the thing is, as you were saying, the dialect is so 2021 that although they never give you a timeline for when this is set, and Kumandra, obviously, from the nature and the animation is amazing, of Asian culture and all that, amazing. It's just, you're in this world as a viewer, and you think to yourself, whatever, like, this is something from like maybe prehistoric times even, or something that's just fictional. And then you hear as you said, the credit line, and you're just like, first of all, this is Awkwafina and a dragon/girl, whatever, animation. And she was obviously at times, I felt that. Yeah. And some of it worked, and most of it, for me at least, didn't. Because Awkwafina, even though she's really great in the dramatic role, to me, she comes off as obnoxious at times in this. And with that whole credit scene, I agree. It was just out of place. And for Kumandra, I'm sure they don't even know what credit is.
It really felt like Kelly Marie Tran and Awkwafina were like ad-libbing most of the movie. It felt like they were kind of just coming up with their own lines. Like, honestly, like a lot of these conversations just felt just so out of place. And which is a shame, because the animation in this movie, they went with this hyper-realistic tone, which I thought was great. But then they were having these other moments where they were having flashbacks in a way cooler animation style. Like, almost like anime, but not really. And as I'm watching these flashbacks of the animation that was way different than the hyperrealism they were going for. Hyperrealism is great, but that animation was better. It's a lot more fun for this movie and for this tone. It's darker, and it's like, every movie doesn't need to look like this. Every Disney animated movie looks like this now. There's not really a difference.
Jacob, so my other issue that I have with the movie is the fact that there's no true identity with what they're going for. Yeah, I thought the beginning was great. The beginning was great, and showing the gems and all that, and we'll get more into the story later. But the fact that it felt like a Western when she was rolling through the desert with Toot Toot, voiced by Alan Tudyk, great in that role as well, one of the best sound effect guys in the business. But the thing is, it felt like a Western, and then you meet this mythical dragon, Awkwafina, and she's goofy the whole time.
So
she's
goofy. As soon as she popped out, it was like, it ruined the whole thing for me. As soon as she comes out and starts talking, I'm like, oh god, this is the movie that we're getting, huh?
Well, I think when we come back, we will get more into the script.
Yeah.
And even more into the voice cast. So stay tuned and stay right in your seats.
This job looks perfect. It says you need a high school diploma. You've got one of those, right?
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
I got that.
Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
Across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, helping solve child hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Welcome back to our review of Raya and the Last Dragon only on The Real Deal. Now, we've come to our final thoughts, and we're going to give you our ratings. So I guess I'll start off by saying, I think, as I said before, I think it's a fairly formulaic Disney movie that doesn't really stand out in the entirety of their canon. There's a lot better movies. I appreciate what they were trying to go for, the quest narrative, but it's done way better before. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's pretty solid. I think that what they were going for emotionally really hit in the end, and so I do have to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go next. And a 6 out of 10 is fair. I mean, it's not what you thought going in. I remember we were discussing, we thought it was going to be great. But for me, I think the mixture of Kelly Marie Tran's voice acting, it really was great. I thought the animation was awesome. I know, Jacob, you thought that you would like to see the original animation for the backstory instead of like the full movie. But for me, the animation was great. The Western themes, when it got darker, I really loved the plague stuff that was going on. I'm not going to spoil more with that. To me, the biggest issue, and we've said this the whole time, Awkwafina, she's a little obnoxious and annoying and repetitive. Some of the formulaic stuff got on my nerves at times when I saw the same thing 6 or 7 times within 20 minutes. But to me, I mean, it was a fun time at the cinema, and maybe a little bit of bias towards the fact that it was in theaters and it was a good experience. Yeah. And the fact that I'm more generous than the two of you. I enjoyed it. Still not one of my favorites. I mean, so far 2020 hasn't delivered a gem.
Well, 2021 technically.
No, 2021, yeah. That's what I said. I would give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, I enjoyed it. If they made a sequel, I would eventually see it. I wouldn't rush to theaters, but there is room for them to make another one if they really want to. So, Raya and the Last Dragon, if it is the last movie in the series, it's fine. If not, I'm more sort of just indifferent towards it. It was 7 out of 10, good, not great.
Yeah, I think I would probably stick it at a 6 out of 10 because there are things that I liked in this movie, but tonally, the majority of it is totally off. Its main characters don't I don't feel the suspense that this movie should be creating, as well as this beautiful world and this beautiful animation that they have. I feel like it's going kind of to waste in a lot of these scenes because of the tone that they chose, and the formula that they've continued to go with. And the only reason I'm giving it a 6 out of 10 instead of a 5, which is just a total meh, is because of these little emotional hits that they sometimes hit on.
Yeah, the editing really worked as we.
And I love the animation. The animation's great. It's just for this kind of movie in its location, and I guess the art style, I wish would be a little different because the characters and the area that they're in is much different.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah. Well, that's next week we are going to be back again. This time with the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Behemoth.
Needless to say, my Saturday was very, very long. I mean, it was 3 hours, almost 3 hours and 50 minutes, something like that, nearly 4 hours. But it was
finish? Yeah, 4 hours. Yeah.
I saw the first version, Joss Whedon's version.
You know what? We can save that for the.
We will save it. We will save it.
We'll get into that next
week. And I'm still going on with it. So thank you for tuning in today. And if you want to follow us on social media, keep up with what we're doing. Follow us on at The Real Deal WTOP on Twitter. and as well as our socials, which we'll put down here. And thank you for tuning in. And as always, keep it real.